just like doing stuff at the same time. But if someone comes up to you, like I think like the classic example is, you know, you bump into someone at an airport and or like an elevator, right? And you have like 30 seconds to answer it and you have no context, and they're like, hey Alex, like how do I improve my play experience with my dog? How do I increase my dog's play motivation? Like, what would your general advice be?
Okay, let's go. Yes, we started.
Actually, I'm glad that we're covering this subject, because when I put that poll up asking for topic ideas, probably this was like the most requested by like multiple people. So my friend Eric, who you've met, Mally, Diane, I really should know Diane's photography. I might get it wrong. Maybe I can link it in the show notes, but Diane has a pet photography company. I'm not even going to guess, because I might guess wrong.
Okay.
I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah. She requested it as well. She's really nice. She's taken photos of Onyx before. So, yeah. So very heavily requested topic, motivation. In various ways as well. You know, people ask it in different ways, like how do you increase a dog's motivation? How do you play more in training? But essentially like variations of the same kind of topic. And
which is?
Motivation, right? And I'm gonna let you do most of the talking on this episode, because I don't think I have a lot of choice. I think you're gonna be like, on this. So
well, I should have had like more coffee than today. I didn't know like I'm gonna be under such a pressure to do all the talking. But yeah, working on something, but let's not plug anything yet.
Okay.
We're gonna leave it for the end. But motivation and play, and especially if it goes for play, I think this subject is not explored enough. The importance of play, or how we can play with the dogs. And I think there is, you know, if you look at the play event, it has some, like, it has like own nature, which is not always appreciated, etc. Oh, I dropped my phone. Hang on. But also, in order for the dogs to truly enjoy it and to use it in training, we have to organize this play event, add some, structure to it, so we can build that motivation and passion for the game, but also being able to implement that in your training, because those are, that doesn't go automatically together. But the motivation in general, regardless if it's a food or play, even dog trainers, like I'm meeting dog trainers that if the dog won't take the sausage, they think, okay, the dog is not trainable, right? Or even better, like ages ago, I had a client that he said that the behaviorist told them that the dog is not trainable or the dog is autistic, because like he was sitting on the sofa and he was throwing the sausage at the dog, and the dog wouldn't take it because it was nervous. But it was perfectly normal dog that was like later on labeled as untrainable and even autistic, whatever like he meant, just because of the fact the dog didn't take the sausage on the day. And I think I don't really know why a lot of like positive trainers or reinforcement-based trainers, they don't pay so much attention on the techniques, how you can build that motivation and passion for the reinforcement, because it's like basically the core of the game, right? If the dog doesn't want what you have, you're not going to be effective in your training. But also, if you look at the balance trainers community, I think there is, okay, let me put it this way. There is no trainer, I believe so, like correct me if I'm wrong, that is not using rewards in training. right? Have you met any?
No one that of any note, like there is people that are like, you always hear stories, don't you, of like, oh, there's this dog trainer down the road and I don't believe in treats, I just believe in respect, but
No way, there's still people like that.
I think there are, but they're getting less and less, and there's certainly no one that anyone would pay any attention to.
All right, so I assume that all of the trainers or most of the trainers or even like most of the dog owners, if not all of the dog owners, they know you have to reward the dog, right? And the passion for the reinforcement doesn't come like in the package very often. There are ways to increase that passion so we can be more effective in the training. But going back to the, like even if you are balance trainers or you use some form of compulsion, it is also form of motivation, because motivation to avoid any sort of discomfort is still motivation. It's not the type of motivation we're going to be discussing today. But if you want to lower intensity of any sort of corrections you're using, right? Because it's simple math. If your dog wants something more, like if the dog wants more your reinforcer than anything in the environment, we are good, right? The dog will work with you and you're going to be very effective in your training. However, if that balance goes other way, this is where we have problems, right? If the dog wants something, for example, from the environment, let's call it distractions, if this is more valuable for the dog than whatever we have in offer. So, and this is where we are having a problems, right? So we can change that balance if we just put a little bit more emphasis on, on the techniques or ways to build that passion and desire for the reinforcers.
Yeah, I mean, I've had similar experiences to you with untrainable dogs because they wouldn't take treats. I've had one that I remember most was I was working with a staffy for like recall training and some reactivity, but like mild reactivity. And they had gone for a few trainers as well. And I think the reason they'd gone through trainers was not because the reactivity was super difficult or anything like that. It was just because the dog wouldn't take food outside and wouldn't take toys. And I spent quite a long time talking to the owner about like, well, trying to figure out like how we can motivate the dog. And like one thing that the dog loved was just a stick.
Okay.
So he would like, he had so much passion for playing with just a stick that he'd find on a wall.
Yeah.
We managed to transition him onto like one of those like dog toy versions of a stick. And like after that, he was easy. So easy because he had so much motivation for that toy.
Yeah.
And like that was just a complete game changer. But he'd been written off by other people because he wouldn't take treats and he wouldn't take like a normal tug toy.
It is, it's always like, I think it's a little bit wrong question to ask. Like, is my dog liking a toys, right? I always advise, look at your dog and be honest about that. Like, take 5 things from your dog's life, like establish what is like top 5 valuable things, and that can be a stick, that can be food, whatever, and use that in your training, right? With some dogs, we have to control access to those motivators, right? With some, we don't, right? There are those 2 movements, like nothing in life is free and plenty in life is free, but I think like all those extremes are, well, extreme. You have to look at the dog in front of you and, adjust or decide, right? So for some dogs, it's not very beneficial for them to have like toy basket and free access to the toys, because then they don't really care about the play or, about the toys. But some dogs are perfectly fine with it, right? And they will still do a lot. Same with the food. Some of the dogs, it's a good idea, at least for a while, to use 100% food in training. Especially when I was doing residential training, that helped me to establish quickly relationship with the dog and, build that little work ethic. However, there are dogs that they will eat 3 times a day and they will do everything for treats, right? So there is no like one fit for all. there are some rules or frames that we can operate in. However, every single dog should be, approached individually.
Food is a little easier to increase the value of because you have the ability to use their meals in training, or it's very easy to increase the value of the food going from how many times you meet clients that come with dry biscuits and then you just bring out like anything, any kind of meat or cheese, and suddenly the dog is different, like happens so frequently. So it's very easy to play with the value of food, but I think sometimes toys can be different. I mean, you definitely do have that experience with toys as well, where the owner is just making a horrible attempt to play with the dog, and when you actually play with them properly, like you can see the motivation. But in terms of actually increasing with a dog that actually doesn't engage with toys or play very much, like, well, I definitely want to get into that process today. But it can be quite difficult as well, because sometimes it's quite hard to sell an owner on that, like a client on that. Like, well, look, I'm just trying to solve my recall problem. Why do I need to why am I spending ages trying to get him to play tug with me? So there's that kind of like element of it. And then also when you're trying to get a dog to play with you, because we spoke about this before, I don't know if that episode got released. We were talking about Ivan playing for like 20 minutes. And I said that clip is like, to me, is like beautiful. Like that process is kind of painful as well. I think as a person, like it's very unmotivating where you're like there in the field and you're trying to play, and because you're not getting any reinforcement from it. It's like, it's quite like demotivating, you know? It's like,
but this element of play is not discovered enough. Like, I think even if it goes for food, if I make, my reinforcement game with the food as a game, or I will add element of play, automatically that food will be much more valuable, right? And then I don't have to, have my dog hungry, or I don't have to upgrade the value of the food because the dog will like the game. And there is something about the play that dogs or we or people, we are drawn into it. Like I think Jack Punks said that if we could get depressed people to play, we would have much less depression.
Man, this podcast just went to a whole nother level. We started bringing up Panksepp. Oh my God.
I dropped my phone again.
Actually, it's really funny because I was literally listening to Sapolsky on the way here. His book Behave, which is like supposed to be really, really good, and I've never read it, but it was quite interesting.
I haven't read it, but I've heard about it.
Yeah, similar kind of ideas, I think. Yeah, so much of it is also like how you use the thing, isn't it? Like, another experience that happens all the time when you do one-to-one training with someone, you play with the dog with a toy that you brought, and then the owner is like, oh my God, I need that toy.
Yeah.
Where did you get that toy from? And that isn't even just like exclusive to toys, because that'll even happen with me with like a whistle or like anything that you use. It's like oftentimes like people think that, oh my God, you must have a special piece of equipment.
Yeah.
I need to train my dog. And obviously it's more like how you use the thing than the thing itself. So we can get into that as well.
Yeah. Definitely. Like I had podcast with Nick recently, and we were just talking about the play as well. And I mentioned that when I was young, we could make play out of anything. It's like it's in us, right? And Nick was talking about his experience with Ivan and his approach to the play, right? So when I was young, like I'm that old, as you like bring it up like quite frequently. I'm that old.
I never bring
So
that
there
up.
was no video games, and like you could take the stick or whatever, and then you could make a game from it. Right?
The only time I've brought that up is when I think you didn't know what a Game Boy was or something like this.
Don't say it out loud.
Or Pikachu or some kind of classic.
Come on, are you 12, Pikachu? Jesus. I thought we have like grown-ups over here.
But I think, sometimes the more you get into training and playing with dogs, the more respect you have for that. You know, like we talk about a lot about dog training, but like playing with dogs is almost its own thing. Like it's almost such a level of like sometimes people talk about being a dog man, right? Or like dogmanship or whatever. It's like a really old term, but like there is something really special about someone that can just get any dog to play with them, or just, you know, they just that's kind of like, to me, the heart of like having a way with dogs, you know, a way of like relating to dogs that I think is like, I think there's like a lot of beauty in that. And there's also a lot of skill in it. And, you know, we can talk about ways that you can get better at it. But there is also a feeling to it as well, I think, that is...
and this is something what makes that thing a little bit more difficult, right? Because like, regardless, I'm going back frequently to the food, because you can make a game from like, and do the food games that will add value to the food. So you don't have to always play with the flavor or, you know, high value treats, lower value treats. I spend a lot of time playing with the food. So later on, my dog will, you know, like to eat anything, and I can use kibble. Like, it doesn't matter, right? Because we are having good time. And if you look at the play and the game, look how we are, you know, excited about the sports, right? So this is like, for me, it's a good analogy to the, like, playing with the dogs to human sports, because look how we are, like we were just talking about like UFC this Saturday, right? How we are getting excited about the sports. And the same way we can create a lot of value in the game, but we have to be a good players. And the challenge is, regardless if you're playing with the toys or with the food, that there is some like mechanical element to it. So you have to be able to move certain way. But also, as you said, like there is like some feel coming into it. And like I think this is a even bigger challenge, because how you can explain the feel. And there are people that they have, including helpers or decoys, they have that, and they are very natural with it. They can, you know, like recognize those emotions in the dog, and they can trigger interest or passion for it, and they can make it, you know, competitive or exciting for the dog. But it's very difficult to teach the feel to the people, and I think this is where the challenge is.
Yeah, absolutely. And like sometimes it's difficult in the context of being a pet dog trainer, because you only have limited time. And I think that for the majority of dogs, you can get somewhere though. You know, it's just occasionally you come across a dog that just doesn't want to engage, and it's like, it takes so much, you know, it's going to take, like sometimes you're trying to prioritize, you know, but there are so many dogs that I meet. Like, to be honest, you know, we're talking about raising motivation, but sometimes people are just scared to play with the dog. You know, like sometimes you have the opposite problem. The dog has so much motivation that the person, like that happens quite frequently. So, you know, even whether it's tugs or balls, you know, you say to the person, oh, is he like tug motivated? It's like, yeah, he's really tug motivated, but I can't play with him because if I get it out, then he you know, he tries to steal it from me, and like he won't think about anything else. And like, I think when you are versed in using toys and training with play, whenever you hear someone say that, it's like, you've hit the jackpot, you know, because it's like, this is going to be easy, you know, because all I have to do is teach this dog some manners around the game and some like rules. And all of a sudden I have something that like outcompetes everything. Yeah.
So if it goes for pet dog people, like I have like a little bit different kind of expectations than from, you know, dog trainers, especially if you are a dog trainer, not only pet dog trainer, but also you want to do the sports. This is where you have to be a extremely good player with pet dogs. You know, the difference is that with pet dog owners, I want them both to have fun, right? So occasionally you have to compromise on the dog's enjoyment, so the person has a little bit more fun, and then therefore they will be playing. However, if you are a dog trainer, especially if you want to use like the play in the sport, we are going all in for the dog, because like heel work is for me, you know, all the behaviors, whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm training for, it's for me. The play is for the dog. So what I want to create is a play event that will have some structure, but without compromising on the dog's enjoyment. So I will prioritize so the dog has maximum satisfaction or maximum desire, and I have to bring some structure on some rules so I can effectively implement it in training, but without compromising on that desire. And this is where we have to become like very good players, not only players. So as you mentioned before, like there is some feel to it. However, when I was teaching over the years and I was working with the dog trainers quite a lot, I wanted to like explain the play almost in mathematical terms. And I think is maybe because of like I was thinking about how can I teach the things, because I don't want to, you know, make that too chaotic. We mentioned like some of the people they are very natural with it, but they may struggle to pass that knowledge because it's a lot of intuition. So it's like they may struggle to teach that to other people. And I was like the same. Like I was struggling to explain the feel, right, to another people. And over the years, I had like, I don't want to say epiphany, but I was thinking and working on that quite a lot to present the play event with the food and with the toys almost in mathematical terms, like step-by-step formula that will work for majority of the dogs.
How much do we want to get into that? You know, I'm curious. I was just as you were talking then, I was thinking, like, you reminded me of a lot of stuff, because I remember talking to a guy on my podcast called Ron Watson, who's a really like well-known Frisbee guy, like high-level disc dog competitor. And he's such an interesting person because he views dogs so differently to like how I think the masses do. You know, he doesn't really think about things in the same terminology that we do. It was interesting because he's the only person I've ever interviewed where I was interviewing him at the same time he was training dogs.
Okay.
That wasn't organized. He was just like in this room and he was like, and it was a bit of a shame because I wasn't set up for that. So I was just doing an audio podcast. And there he is, like, just like doing stuff at the same time.
No way.
He's a really, really cool guy. Really cool guy. But he thinks he has a whole other terminology which is kind of hard to like jump into unless you know him well. And that is a little bit tricky. But the way he talks about training dogs, and he has a different terminology, and this isn't at all how he would say it, but it's like in loops. So he doesn't like, oftentimes he's not training like one thing. He's training like three things at once. And he has like a whole loop of like, you know, what he's doing. You know, he's training the dog to spin, and then he's training the dog to like jump off him, and then and like everything comes together in a loop. And when you were talking about play, then I was thinking in the same way, because oftentimes with play, I think you kind of need, in order to have a good game, like it needs to be able to circle around.
Yeah.
And like, for example, oftentimes what ruins a game is the dog's desire to do something different. Like with IGP dogs, they want to have the toy, right? So they win the toy and then they bugger off and they just have the toy, right? Yeah. And that kind of like, that's game over, you know?
Yeah.
Or not even just IGP dogs. So many pet dogs do that as well. So there's lots of like things that sometimes can like trip the game up and then just kind of stop it from like actually like being a good game.
So because like I kind of recognize, or when I'm teaching play, I've got like three components of the play, right? So we have desire, retrieve, and release. Like those are so we can use play effectively in the training, right? So first of all, we need desire, so the dog wants to do it and has passion for it. Then we need to retrieve. Otherwise, you will have like only one repetition of whatever you're doing, which is not going to be effective way of training. As you mentioned, like if the dog like buggers off, then, you know, game over, right? So we need that retrieve, and we need that, and we need the dog to be able to give the object away for us, right? So those are those three elements that will let me to use the play in training. If it goes for retrieve, I also think this is kind of reflection of interactive nature of the game and relationship with the dog. Because if you have that interaction, and we're gonna talk about the nature of that interaction in a sec, but let's put it like you have that interaction with the toy, with the dog, and after the dog is winning the toy, then he doesn't want to interact with you anymore. That means maybe there is some room for improvement, right? Maybe that interaction wasn't as cool as we could imagine, right? Because of obviously the dog can be more on the possessive side, so we'll enjoy the object as well. But we want that interaction also to be, you know, like be even more valuable. So the same like you play football, there is a ball, but also but the playing football is the essence of it, right? Like the ball alone is not as valuable. You can play alone, but the goal is, so, you know, you can play with someone and have that competitive game. And yeah, like at this moment, I would like to say that, like, I don't want to ruin like some people's word, but the tag game is not a fucking dance. We talk about that interactive nature of the game, right? Like interactive play. Yes, it is interactive, right? But I would argue that the better term is competitive.
I don't know if I've been like just so influenced by you, Alex. Because, and maybe you're going to tell me I'm wrong about this, but I definitely think about tug as being a competitive game.
Oh, you would be surprised. You would be surprised.
No,
like how many people, like dog trainers, like I'm explaining the nature of the game is competition. Yes. This is a competition between you and your dog over the object, which is a toy. The competition, the dog always wins only by a hair.
Yeah.
Right? So it has to be like, if you are a good player, you will make that competition real, right? And the dog will be powered by winning the game.
And you're probably going to hate me for saying this, but I think the game tug is kind of a fight, or it's kind of like play wrestling. Like, you know, when you're kids and you have like a play fight, you know, it's kind of like that, because there's this competitive element, and it's like, I'm going to steal the toy. No, I'm going to steal the toy. And then, you know, if you're a good dog trainer, you want the dog to, like, obviously you want the dog to win when they're putting in the maximum effort, and, you know, there's some strategy around that. But it kind of is a bit more like a play fight, you know? Or like,
if you look at the human sports, like I very often refer to the human sports, so, you know, people can understand the nature of the play better. The human sports, they developed because of the war, right? Two teams competing against each other. So if it goes for the purpose of the play, why we are playful, apparently it is so, you know, we can, and our dogs can practice, or animals practice fighting and hunting early on without the risk of the body, but also establish their competence or position in their, like, let's call it society, right? Apparently there is no strong evidence for it, but we have no other explanation where we are playful, right? So it is, you know, quite obvious, maybe for you, but I get a lot of even dog trainers that they say like, oh, it's all about interaction, right? It's interaction. The dog is interacting with the toy and interacting with me, and we are having great time, which is not really the case, right?
No, I totally agree. Actually, I've got so many different things I'm thinking of now, but like, I grew up with 4 brothers, and we played for all the time. But there is like the rules of play fighting with each other as humans also implies with the tug game with dogs, because it's like if there's a massive power differential, it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
And it's not even just power differential. It's like if I was play fighting with one of my brothers, there's a level you go to, isn't there? Like if we're play fighting, I'm not trying to kill you, you know? But if one brother is like taking it like way more serious, you're like, whoa, what the fuck? Like what are we doing here? Like you're trying to tear my head off. I'm just messing around.
So the fight has to be competitive. Right. Because then it's not competitive. Like right now, having another Mali, and then I like every evening I'm just watching them play. And my dog is a dick. Like my dog, like if I gave him full freedom to interact with other dogs, he would pin them to the ground, sit on their head, and wouldn't let them to move. Like this is what he likes, right? That's why he's not playing with dogs that much, right? Especially with the young males, right? This is the one strategy that he has. But with the female that I have right now, like he wants the game to keep going. And he will be pretending, he will be lying down on his back and inviting her.
Yes.
So he doesn't want to ruin the game.
Yes.
Because if he would go like normally he would do with like any sort of dog that he would meet in the park, then she wouldn't want to play with him.
Yes.
So he pretends like, hey, I'm weaker, and then I'm a little bit stronger. And he's honestly... he's just so inviting, and you can see the strategy behind that, right? He doesn't want to ruin the game.
People call it self-handicapping.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, no, I have the same experience like with Onyx at the moment, because I have the puppy, and like it's still quite a new thing, and she's not figured out, I think, maybe a little bit. I feel like she's just starting to figure out if he grabs the other end of the tug, she can't just rip it off of him because it ruins it.
Okay.
But she's still figuring that out a little bit.
Yeah.
But one thing she has definitely figured out is in order to get him to play with her, is to get the toy and like put it in his face.
Okay, yeah.
And keep putting it in his face until you can get him to like grab it. So yeah, it's really fun to watch dogs play. But I've actually heard a counter argument to the fighting or the like competitive game of tug.
Yeah.
I remember reading another dog trainer that was saying the way that we play with tug is all wrong. You're trying to, all of this movement, all of the trying to take it off of the dog. Actually, if you watch two dogs play, it's much more of a steady pulling back and forth and much less of a dramatic thing.
Hang on, you have to explain that a little bit more.
Oh, man, how can I explain this? Like when, for example, when we play with tug with dogs, we were just talking about it should be a competitive thing, and oftentimes with a lot of dogs, you're pulling it a lot and you're pushing the dog and stuff like that because that's what really gets them going. What this person was saying is if you watch two dogs play, like if they're playing tug, oftentimes they're just at a standstill, right? They're just like two dogs like tugging either side, or one's tugging a little bit more, but there's not all of this movement, right? There's not like, it's not this like.
Okay, we are not.
I'm playing
dogs.
devil's advocate.
Yeah. It's interesting
advocate.
because, like, like we established ages ago that we are not wolves. Like dogs are not wolves, and we are not having wolf pack in the house. And then, the way, like two dogs will play with the object is totally different than two dogs will play without the object, right? So I think. We through domestication and having dogs and breeding them. We developed kind of like passion for different interactions. So even if you look at the toys, right? You mentioned that like some of the owners, I want that toy because they think the toy is magical. But the toy initially is meaningless. It's something we can condition the dog to love the toys, right? Build those emotions. And so later on, the presence of the toy will produce those emotions, right? But initially, it's meaningless. It might seem like, oh, my dog likes toys, because when you have a puppy, the puppy will bite everything. And probably at some point, you will bite the toy, and this is the object that we let the puppy to bite, right? But if I see the dogs that they for example, they were rescued and they were like wild dogs, like majority of their life. They don't have that like automatical instinctive passion, like, oh, there's a toy, we're going to have the game, right? We have to create that.
I also think there's a lot wrong with that idea. You know, like, for example, I think that's just one of our like advantages as a human, that we can play in that kind of competitive way where we can add all of the movement and the stuff like that. Like, and there are other games that we play that we wouldn't play. Like there are other games that we play human to dog that we wouldn't play human to human. You know, there is no version of agility where one person is is leading a human around an agility course, or like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no, like, you don't play bite work with people. You know, like that's the unique.
Bite work is like sort of like martial arts, I think.
Yeah, but you don't have a person running around biting sleeves. You know, like that, we're taking in the unique characteristics of, you know, like that's just our thing. And the proof is in the pudding, because who has the dogs that are most, find the tug game most valuable? Is it the people that are playing like this, like really steady play, like trying to mimic dogs? Or is it the people that are playing with the much more enthusiastic tug and competitive play? And it's like, well, that's obvious.
Okay.
So the proof is in the pudding, you know?
A couple of things, right? And I'm not saying you're like specifically about what you said, but something that I observe quite a lot. So the game has to be competitive, and you know, when you have two dogs that they are pulling and they are pretty much even, right? There is some
still a competitive game,
right? Yeah. It's competitive, right? However, like what I often see, like like people dragging the dog left and right, and they are creating some tension and frustration, which will produce the energy, but it's not really, you know, I would argue those are not necessarily good emotions, right? So the play has to be competitive, right? If you are a good player, you will, you know, it's like father playing with the child, right? You have to act certain ways so the child will believe you are having real competition, right? And it's not going to be like participation trophy. It's not going to be, you know, so the child needs to believe like, and it's real competition, and then they will develop that sense of accomplishment and confidence. Otherwise, it's just fake.
I know what you're saying, because there are some people that are too frantic in the play. And I'm not trying, man, I'm screwing this up. Like, I don't mean that you should be frantic in the way that you play with the dog. And I'm just struggling to explain, like, but there should be some animation. Maybe try the word animation. From the way that you play with the dog, not just like holding it and like.
Especially if you are using play to build confidence, and I think this is like, it's not only a reward, but it's like one of the best, if not the best way to build the dog's confidence. The same like, you know, young children that they are better at sports, they will be like usually more confident ones, right? Because they are good at it, they're winning, right? But especially if you want to build the confidence, you can challenge the dog, but also give like animated feedback, so the dog will feel a little bit stronger, right? So, but also, you know, like in order to make that game valuable and so it makes sense for the dogs, it has to have some structure or rules like any other games. So maybe where I'm going with it, like very often, or like a lot of people, they know we should give the wins, but I'm asking them when you are giving a win, and they're like, no, I'm just giving a win because the dog's supposed to win, right? So it's more like a participation trophy, right? So if you participate in any sport, there is clear rule set, right? But also clear way to win the game. If you are playing football, you want to score the goal. If you are playing, I don't know, boxing, you want to knock the guy out, right? You know how to score the points or how to win the game. To put it even simpler example, if you are playing tug of war, the human version, it's very clear which team is winning and how they're winning. They're just pulling harder. And when you are creating play event, you want to explain the dog or teach the dog how to win the game. So the standard way is how the dog can win the game. So there will be specific action the dog has to take in order to win, rather than just being served with the toy. So that can be pulling, that can be head shake, that can be pushing, very rare, unless you've got the dog from the ring line, right? Or dropping weight. And you, like, very often those are ignored, especially the last one. If the dog will drop weight, you, like a lot of handlers, they will ignore that, right? But also you have to recognize those actions when the dog is taking, and then kind of give the dog a win. So the dog will grow, okay, if I do that, then I'm winning the game. And that creates the situation when you will make the game more challenging, the dog will have the skill and will fight harder, right? So then we can add like a little bit more spice or excitement to that game, right? So it's not only like, oh, we are tagging, and you get the toy, because then when you will bring a little bit more challenge to the game, usually the dogs are getting like a little bit more upset. But if we explain the dog, hey, if you do one of those 4, then you're going to win the game, right? Then if you will make the game a little bit more challenging, then the dog is like, I know what I have to do. I just have to do it stronger, right? Then if you provide the win, overall experience will be, much more satisfying. To make it even clearer, right? Like, we get the satisfaction from doing difficult things, right? You don't get the same satisfaction from, I don't know, give me example of your Game Boys.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because I always think...
sorry, let me, apologies, like, let me finish the sentence, right? You will get more satisfaction from, I don't know, climbing or doing something extremely difficult than something what is like very easy, right? So there are levels to it, and if you will make the game that excitable and you will bring that like massive sense of accomplishment, then the overall desire and value of the game will be much higher.
Yeah, I think like, I was going to say, like, I think one example that gets used a lot there is like the video game example, right? Like if you play a game on like super easy mode, like it very quickly actually kind of gets boring, because it's just too easy.
Yeah.
But the same is true if you start a game on like legendary difficulty, it's like, it's too hard, like you're just getting killed like 5 seconds in, and like actually good games gradually go up in difficulty, so you start off easy where you're learning the game and you're like figuring out how to play.
I'm gonna use it like that. That's a good example.
Yeah, and then gradually it gets more and more difficult.
Yeah.
And like as you go, and like so it's a sense of accomplishment, as you said, like you feel accomplishment if you win a boss fight or you beat like a really hard level.
Yeah, like, so what I tend to say, like, if it's too easy, like if you are talking about the game or play or anything really dog-wise, like if it's too easy, it's going to be boring. If it's too difficult, it will produce anxiety, right? Or unsureness. And very often what I like see is very passive dogs and very active handlers. Like the handlers that they're ignoring those little signals from the dog, like I'm trying, but you are not giving me those wins, or even not the win, like feedback in the given time, and the dogs are become like or frustrated or tense, or those feelings are not necessarily right. And to explain that a little bit better, the fact that the dog wants something that you have doesn't necessarily means like all the feelings are positive. To give you an example, I had a client that she came for heel work training, and the dog was whining in the heel work. Was whining on the first step. It was whining on the 10th and 15th, and and we look at the heel work training reinforcement schedule. Like everything was right. But then we looked at how she was playing with the dog, and how she was playing with the toys and with the food, and the dog was like whining during the play as well. So we shouldn't be surprised that, that sort of emotional state will be presented in the behavior that, is happening just before the game. Once we organized the play event with the food and with the toys, so the dog was like focused, motivated, but not heavily frustrated and not anxious about it, right? Once we cleared the noise from the game, the noise from the whining from the hero was gone, right?
That's really cool.
This is what I'm saying. Like, if it's too easy, it's gonna be boring. If it's too difficult, will produce not necessarily good feelings. And we like, especially for the dog sports, especially for like, if you like for dog training, if you want to use the play in the training, we have to pay attention to those emotions, right? So my goal is so the dog is like perfectly understands how to win the game. Like it's focused 100%, like hard focus on the job, right? And that will create also clear mind in whatever training you do with the dog.
If you had someone, because I think this is kind of the nature of like people sending in these questions on Instagram, it's like there is so much that is unsaid. You've never met the dog. You don't know what it is that they're struggling with. But if someone comes up to you, like I think like the classic example is, you bump into someone at an airport and or like an elevator, right? And you have like 30 seconds to answer it and you have no context. And they're like, hey, Alex, like, how do I improve my play experience with my dog? How do I increase my dog's play motivation? Like, what would your general advice be?
Get my car.
I think you need to publish your course first. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's gonna come out. That's gonna be my play formula and play motivation for dog sports and training in general. Like it is. It's like with anything else. Right? Like you have a reactive dog, right? But you have to do a little bit more digging. Like why the dog is reacting, how intensive the dog is, like what are the feelings, what the dog wants to accomplish, right? And then you can give the advice. However, on top of that, like get my course. If I would say to someone, like look how your dog is interacting with other dogs. Look, how your dog is interacting with, for example, in prey mode when chasing animals, and mimic those. Right? I think social play is something that is not talked enough.
What do you mean?
We don't use any toys, we don't use any external objects, right? But it can be very, very powerful, right? And I think this is the purest way of playing. But also you have, like if you are using any object, so for example, if your dog likes to chase squirrels, like look what the squirrel does, like will run and up to the tree, and the dog is like, damn, I almost had it, right? Like next time, I'm just gonna try fucking harder in order to catch the squirrel, right? And the same thing I would do with the toy. Like I will tease the dog and hide the toy, right? And the dog's supposed to be like, oh, where did that go? And then I will do it again. Next time probably will give me a little bit more effort, right? And next time even more effort. And then I can give the dog actually a grip. So we can really, by observation how your dog is interacting with the world, you can adjust your playing strategy. I always look what gets you in trouble and use it to work in your favor. Your dog is getting, reactive on the harness, and out of frustration, use the harness and restraint to build the passion for a toy or a food, right? I do that a lot. And the same with the play. Like, look how your dog is chasing animals. Try to mimic those, and then you're going to be fine.
Well, that terrifies people a lot. I think so many times dog owners say, oh, if I start playing with the fluffy furry toy, am I just going to encourage my dog to chase squirrels? Or, so like, or if I do that stuff on the harness, am I just going to create even more reactivity? Like that's a really common question I get from dog owners.
So there are two things, right? There are dog trainers and dog owners, right? Dog trainers, we should be aware of what's up. We should understand all the, principles and all the mechanism that, okay, you can, there is I tend to say there is a good and bad frustration. You can use frustration, which has very negative connotation, to work in your favor, right? You really can. You are creating just passion for something that you have control of, and that's it. And if you can create similar passion to your reinforcement as your dog has to, for example, to the environment, then you are good. This is a very good place to be.
Yeah,
everything, right? Because you're not going to be losing, that battle with the distractions.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is easier. I oftentimes think that when we're talking to like puppy owners and stuff, and sometimes, they always want to know like, oh, what is the exercise I need to be doing with my dog? And sometimes, the best thing you can do is just build motivation for like play or something like that. Because if you have that motivation, everything is easier.
Yeah. We mentioned before those components of the playing that we can use in training. And you mentioned that like the trainer, who was it? Like that, the circle guy.
Oh man, yeah.
And the same it is going with the play. We have that desire, retrieve, and release, right? And I always start with the desire. But if you are a good player, you can work on those three things. And I will be posting or uploading some playing sessions where we pay attention to multiple things. However, if I'm working with someone new to the game, like let's work on one thing at the time. Work on desire, like because without that there is no point of doing anything else. A lot of people, they jump into impulse control before the dog has like any interest yet, right? Like this is very common. Impulse control around the food, or impulse control around the toys where the dog doesn't yet develop passion for it. All right. So desire is everything, but in separate session you work like once the desire is there, you have like sufficient amount of passion, you can work on the retrieve, and then you can work on the release, right? And usually, I advise to like go ahead in that order, right? Because especially with the release, why we are presenting that in the circle, because those things are affecting each other. Let's say you have some conflict with the release. The dog doesn't really like to give the toys away, or gets like upset with it. It's not really refusing, but gets upset with it. Like, I lost that toy and I really want to have it. Then what is really happening, if the dog has conflict with the release, will less likely bring the object back to you, right? Because the release is happening like next to you, right? If the dog is not retrieving the toy, less likely handlers will give the win. If the handlers won't give the win, then we compromise on overall enjoyment of the game, right? So that's why I like to present it in the circle. So because like those things are, connected and affecting each other, and, conflict in any sort of area will cause some issues. Another example, if you will, for example, you have a lot of power in the game, but the dog is frustrated, right? Then good luck getting that retrieve. That should come, like in my opinion, that should come from the dog, right? Because if the dog get like too much pressure, too much challenge in the game, right? Then usually they want to go away and rest before they will bring the toy, or they become possessive, frustrated, whatever. Like there are a couple of options, and then there's less likely will bring the object back. Not to mention they don't want to let go of the object. So you have to pay attention to the feelings and emotions in each component, right? But so we can create that play event that we can use in training. And only when I have all those components like in place, only then I will use it and implement that in training. I had quite a few agility handlers where they had like this young dog that wasn't playing yet that good, but it was just run, bite out, run, bite out, run, bite out. And the dog was getting upset with it, right? I don't want to do it, right? Or didn't show enough passion for the game. And therefore, like, didn't have like enough, passion for the sport. So I always advise, like, create that play event, all the components, then you can use it in training. Of course, there are way around it. But as a rule, as a formula.
Yeah. This conversation gets me hyped about playing with dogs. I think there's a weird, like, I know I kind of was getting at this earlier, but sometimes I feel like a bit of a madman because I just feel like no one else seems to like get it in terms of like there's just like there's a real freaking magic skill, whatever you want to call it, to playing with dogs that like people don't seem to pay attention to. They only pay attention to the dog training, if we can separate those two things for like a moment, or like, but if you just watch someone that's really good at playing with dogs playing with a dog, it's like, it's just such an art,
It is.
And like, I think if we were living in a parallel universe where we didn't train dogs, we just played with them, I think I would equally be interested in that.
All right.
Like, I would equally just like be happy to just like, if you just forgot dog training for a second and just playing with dogs, I think you can spend just as long mastering that as you can any other element of dog training.
Definitely. Like, play on the steroids is called bite work. And to be a good helper or be a good decoy, it's some form of art, in my opinion, right? Because, like, especially over there, you have to read the dog's emotions, right? And respond to it. And, like, being a GP helper, like, helped me massively with the playing with the dogs, because I had that experience of working with ton of dogs, and from every interaction I'm trying to learn something. But also, working with people and working with pet dogs and working dogs, like, I was always trying to like put it into mathematical terms almost, like, so I can explain that so anybody can understand, right? Because you mentioned, like, there is a lot of feel to it, there is like art to it, and it's very hard to
I'm just trying to
give the footsteps to do the good painting.
I know what you're saying. I'm just trying to make people realize, like, why I don't know, just see the beauty in it, because I just think it's like incredible. Like, I don't like to keep bringing it up, but like, I haven't seen anyone else post it, and Ivan posted the like 20. It's a long, quick clip. It's like 20 minutes of him just playing with a dog that didn't want to play, and eventually getting the dog to play. I don't think you've seen that, have you? You really have to watch it, because to me, it's like a piece of art. It's just beautiful, and I wish more people posted content like that. But the trouble is, I think it would do terribly.
Okay.
I think no one would watch it. But I think it's just stunning, Like, I just think there is something. It's like, I'm not into horses. I don't know why we keep coming back to horses on this podcast, but I think people feel the same about like horse whisper. I don't know anything about horses. Maybe that's a terrible term, but like people that have that kind of like, they connect with the horse or whatever. I think people feel the same way. But I think in dogs that it's like through the play, is like there is just something really special, especially when you have a dog that doesn't want to play. Obviously, if you have a dog that really wants to play, it's a little bit less like interesting to watch in some ways, versus when you see, although it's still cool, but when you see someone bring the dog's confidence out.
Yeah, I get it. But however, like, I don't believe, or I don't buy into idea of the whispering thing. I think even with the play, you can learn that. Really, you can learn that. You can, you just need to be, like know what we are looking at, and it doesn't require, in my opinion, of like, okay, maybe let's put it this way: you have to like it or be very good at faking that you like it, right? So the first thing is, if you are not going to have enjoyment from it, it's gonna be like very, very hard day, right, for you to teach your to play with your dog. So first of all, you have to like it. But if you like it, I think you are halfway there, because there are things that you can, it's just like there is some formula for building the play event, right? There are steps you have to take. For example, to create desire, there are some movements, misses, etc. There's a ton of things that you don't have to be whisperer, or you don't have to like be born with any sort of like magical skill or whatever. I think it's learnable, and a lot of dog trainers or dog owners, they need to be just informed what to look at.
Well, dog owners don't need to get like even aspire to that level in order to have a lot of productivity. But to me, and I don't really give a shit about the term whispering. I'm not like at all like connected to that word. I just threw that out there because I think I've heard people talk about that in relation to horses. I'm talking about the level of mastery. There's a point where the mastery of the skill becomes an art. In the same way you said, like painting is like paint by numbers, like, oh, I can teach someone to paint. You can teach anyone to paint, definitely. But there becomes a level in the skill where it becomes an art, like there is like, pick a famous like artist, like any, like obviously, let's say like the Mona Lisa is an art, right?
Yeah.
You could say, oh, I can teach anyone to paint,
Yeah.
You could probably teach someone to recreate the Mona Lisa. But it's like there's a level of mastery where something becomes an art.
Yeah.
You could say that of all dog training, I think. You can learn to train dogs. You can learn to play with dogs, definitely. But there is, I think that probably goes across everything in life, You can learn to play a guitar. You can learn to play violin, whatever. But when you get to a certain level of mastery, it becomes an art. It becomes so beautiful to watch that it's just like art.
Yeah, I totally agree. The thing is that vast majority of dog owners or dog handlers,
They don't give a shit about that.
But
They don't give a shit about that.
no, they have to learn to play with one dog.
Yes.
Right? Because like
I'm not talking
like for
about
me,
please.
to develop the skills in the helper work or develop the skills with playing with the pet dogs, etc. It took so long time. It was just like dozens, like I don't know how many dogs, right? And then I was failing with some and then learning from that, etc., right? But if you are like, let's say you are not professional dog trainer, but you have the dog and you want to do some sport with that dog, you have to just learn to play with that dog and develop skills to play with that dog. And I think it's doable for anyone, especially since that play is in our dogs, right? We just have to uncover it. And what I see like very, very often, that we, like a lot of handlers, they are balancing on, let's say 50% there or 70% there. So there is so much more to get from the dog.
You don't have to be Jimi Hendrix to play guitar.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
You can, and like, you don't need to aspire to be Jimi Hendrix to like want to learn to play guitar. We spoke about this in our last podcast, the off-breeds one, where it was like,
you don't have to be world champion.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can enjoy something and you can gain like a lot, like you can have it can really help your dog training and just your relationship with your dog, just to learn like how to play with your dog.
Yeah, like you can be Jimi Hendrix for your dog. Like that's it, right? You don't have to like be able to play with like all sorts of dog shape and sizes, right? However, like creating that play event, there is so many benefits, right? Of course, there is relationship that it is very hard to establish other way. Of course, we can use it as a high value reward, but most and foremost, like we can. It's a great confidence builder, and this is where I got a little bit more obsessed about the structure of the play and how I want my dog to perceive the game in order to build the confidence.
You've got me hyped up about playing. I need a course or something, Alex, that can teach me teach me some kind of structure that's gonna enable me to start playing.
I call it formula for marketing purposes only.
Okay.
Right.
Where do I go? What do I do? What's the plan?
We're gonna I will post that probably on my Instagram and Facebook. And if that's gonna go out as this episode is going out, then we're gonna put it in the note. Finally I've got the pressure of time, which I didn't have like before. So maybe I will finish that course. Like just to plug a couple of things. First of all, that's gonna be kind of live course. So the formula is there, the structure is there, the main information that anybody needs is there, but also I call it live course, where I will be adding things constantly. For example, play sessions with the dogs that, I train, or like with people that I coach them. So I will be adding like extra content. And also there is the community aspect of that course, because the thing is that there are two things, right? First of all, you can have the course, but like I had that very often, that I had a question, and there was like, I don't want to name the trainer, but I did the course and I had a question specific to my dog, and there was no one to ask, right? So I want to give that element that you can go through the course, but also you have like someone to talk like about the things that are over there. But also, do you know Mr. Beast?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said something like that. If you are alone and you are pursuing something, it's going to take you long time to try, make mistake, try again, make mistake, etc. But if there is like couple of you, then Steve is doing mistake on Monday and gives you, advice how to solve it. George is doing on Tuesday, Susie, etc., right? So I think by having community around the subject, you can just learn much faster, and this progress will be, just like you're gonna be much effective, if that would be the way to put it, because you can not only learn on you and your dog, but you can get experience of other people as well.
Yeah, there's pretty much nothing that can go wrong that hasn't gone wrong for someone else at some point before.
Yeah.
Right? So like from here, people need to go to your Instagram. I'm going to try and certainly get that link in the show notes as soon as possible. But for argument's sake, it's Alex Temperament Lato, right? Is that the one you're going to post it on?
Yes.
Sweet. So type in Alex Temperament Lato on Instagram and it'll...
Or on Facebook. Either way.
Yeah,
That's
super.
Gonna be... Cool. So, let's train dogs.
Let's go play with dogs.
Let's play with dogs then.
Bye.